Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of this podcast. Today, I'm joined with Adrian, who's the co-founder of Chilipepper.io. Hey, Adrian, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Ali.
Yeah, so why don't you introduce yourself? What's Chilipepper.io, and what's it all about?
Sure thing. So my name is Adrian Calderon. I am the co-founder of Chilipepper, and Chilipepper is a simple tool that to create forms that look nice on Notion pages and help people really create more dynamic workflows in their workspace. For those who aren't familiar with Notion, Notion is an all-in-one workspace that helps people really solve their own problems in a digital way and has really sort of grown in popularity as everything under the sun, from productivity, from using it as a productivity tool, to project management, to dashboards, to life tracking, all kinds of things. And so Chili Pepper is a little add-on on top of Notion.
Nice, yeah, and huge fan of Notion. I started recently using it as on a full time basis, and it's before I was using OneNote, which wasn't fun to use, and then I switched over to Notion. Yeah, funny story, but how we got in touch. So I set up a website for this podcast, and I was trying to figure out how to like collect emails or like user information. I saw a form on the Indie Bytes website, which is I think run by James, and I was trying to figure out if he created this like form thing through Notion, like native Notion tools, or was it done something else? I was trying to figure that out, and I was like, Chili Pepper, interesting. And then I started googling about Chili Pepper, and I started using it. And while I was using it, you guys sent an email saying, "Oh, you know what? We launched a premium version of the service. It has like a bunch of features." And I was like, "Let me reach out to these guys and see if they're interested in coming on." So yeah, so that was really cool.
Yeah, this story, I love this story because it's actually a pretty common way in which people discover chili pepper is they see a form on someone's like really beautiful Notion website and then like see the little form by chili pepper at the bottom and click that and find us. And so we've had a lot of word of mouth in that way. So it's exciting. And I've also talked to James McKibben when he set up his Notion page for his Indie
Ah,
Bites podcast when he was just starting out. So it was a nice,
nice, nice. That's funny. Yeah, I
nice
so I
coincidence.
I took a lot of inspiration from his website. I'm not a designer, so I had to like get inspiration. So he served me as an inspiration. So yeah, I was like I didn't want to spend time like setting up a website. So I set it up on Notion and I wanted to quickly get it off the ground. So yeah, Notion. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with Notion these days. It's just it's it's
Totally.
it's crazy. So I want to circle back to how'd you guys get into developing Chili Pepper?
Yeah. So story time for Chili Pepper. So I have a co-founder. His name is Carson. He couldn't join us. He has a full-time job, so uh, so it's a stretch for him. But it actually started. It's Chili Pepper was sort of sparked is a conversation that Carson and I had when we first met, which was at a Notion meetup that I was hosting in New York back when we did those in person, and hopefully again one day and we were sort of just chatting about like all the awesome things that we were seeing being created in Notion, right? Especially in like a meetup context like that, we were sort of bringing together people who were passionate about Notion or like learning Notion for the first time and really seeing like all the different things that people were building. And what I saw especially was people building like their own entire like operating systems in Notion to like run their
Mm,
business or run their team or run their life. And so we were sort of chatting about like, and Carson and I both being sort of developers and product people, like, well, what are some of the challenges and ways in which we were running into it? And one way that was really palpable, even in that meetup, was really trying to sort of facilitate getting people to contribute into Notion if they didn't already have a Notion account or like weren't already in the Notion bandwagon. Notion isn't yet really
mhm.
able to like collaborate with people who don't have a Notion account or like who aren't in a Notion workspace already. And so one example of that in the meetup was that we were like trying to facilitate discussions in Notion in real time, and like getting people signed up
Oh
was like
wow.
always a hassle and a challenge. And so one of the like things that Carson and I started talking about was like, well, it would be really great if you just have like a little form. You just like need this little thing to be able to get someone to submit things into a Notion database, and just to like get it in, right? To help sort of enhance some of those workflows. And so we started Chili Pepper just really as a side project, and like just a way to collaborate among people who, who were like similarly passionate about this space. And we had it online, and we're starting to run it. I built the initial like backend integration with Notion at that time using their unofficial API, which basically meant just hacking their backend. And Carson really worked on the front end and the design of things. And then Chili Pepper got product hunted with no planning, no launch, nothing, and just started getting a bunch of users. So like the classic original way that things got product hunted. And so we sort of decided to lean into it and really like, get evolve Chili Pepper as a real product with good legs and foundation underneath it, and have continued with it ever since. We've been really excited to see, and I've been blown away. And what gets me up every day about Chili Pepper is just seeing all the things that people continue to build in Chili Pepper. I've seen so many things that like have surprised me each time. Some of them being like a podcast website,
Oh yeah.
and things like that. So that's how Chili Pepper got started.
Nice. That's quite impressive that you guys got product hunted like organically, because people, that's their dream, right? To be able to get product hunted just out of the blue, and then this is like as organic as it gets.
Right.
So that's really really impressive. So just to sort of hone in on when you guys came up with the idea, okay, this is the problem, which is you wanted to get information from people, and you're like, okay, what if there was a form, and then that was the seed of the idea, and then you guys went off and then worked on it for how long?
We were really working on it for like probably about 3 months, really, before like we actually like put something online. And it definitely wasn't. What's interesting to me about Chili Pepper's inception is that it certainly was not the like story that you often hear of someone who's like, "All right, we like sat around a table and came up
Yeah,
with like an idea and like really honed into this problem space, right?" Like, and like I'm a project manager, so like that's what I used to do all the time. It was so much more casual and organic than that. It was just like we know that this thing like needs to exist. We were surprised that it didn't exist in Notion already, right?
yeah,
Airtable has a feature like this. Like
yeah,
we were expecting this feature just to be dropped by Notion at any time, but we were like,
yeah.
until then, let's just make something that we could use that will come in handy for both of us.
Nice.
Um, and so we were probably took about
Mhm.
3 months before we had something that was live, and that was bare bones. Like it was super bare bones and simple.
Mhm.
But people gravitated right on top of it. Like as soon as when you start to search for Notion forms, which people
Mhm.
often started searching for,
Yeah,
Chili Pepper would pop up, and so that's how sort of people started to get into it. And then what was really interesting was we were able to then I started as people started asking us questions and like having problems, and of course there were bugs and like
yeah.
handling support. That's when I started
Mhm.
being able to like put the real product hat on and be like and start asking a bunch of questions about, well, so what kind of workflow are you setting up, or like what context are you adding this form into, or what are you trying to capture, like. And that's when we started really
Interesting.
discovering a lot of the like more deeper use cases of like
Interesting cases.
where this
Yeah.
fits in, right? But yeah, we certainly didn't like set out to create a form product. We were just like, there needs to be this additional building block in Notion, and so here, let's create it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think you would something like this you would expect out of the box from Notion, and I was surprised myself that they didn't have something like this, and that got me googling, and then that got me to Chili Pepper IO. So after, so let just walking through the journey of, you guys decided you wanted to do it, you did it, and then put it out in 3 months, and it's up there. What were the next steps? Because I know a lot of people, including myself, when they have an idea in mind, and they know, it's a problem, usually a problem that they either they're solving for themselves or maybe a close friend or whatever. They have this idea, they put it up, and then after that they don't know what to do. So lucky ones like you guys, people are actively looking for a certain service or product in that area, and they happen to stumble upon it. When you guys released Chili Pepper IO, put it up, what, like, did you guys do any SEO? Did you guys tell, like, LinkedIn post, or like what
Hmm.
what, what happened after that?
Yeah, we did zero growth or marketing.
Oh wow, that's impressive.
We basically, what we did do is we like created a Twitter account, and we at least started like tweeting a few tweets here and there, like, here's what Chili Pepper is. If you need a form for Notion, this is what it is.
I see, I see,
Um,
I see.
but the what we really were focused on at that time actually was because we were like, again, the user growth was sort of surprising to us.
Hmm.
Was starting to One of the key things was making sure that we put into place all the secure, like all the like really important security stuff, um, and infrastructure to secure what, especially at that time and even to this day, were the Notion tokens, which people
Mm.
needed to give us in order to integrate, again, like using sort of the unofficial Notion API, which were sensitive credentials, right? And
Yeah.
so I was like laser focused. We were both laser focused on like making sure that we could actually provide this service to in a
Hmm.
trusted way, right? We
So when you guys, as part of like the onboarding process, did you guys request the token from the user?
Right, yeah. So in order
Ah,
for someone to connect their form to Notion, we ask them to go and retrieve their token from their Notion
interesting.
account and then store it in our system. And so we had to be like super clear with people about like, here's what this means. This means you're giving us your Notion credentials.
Hmm.
So we had to be like really careful about making sure that that was ultra secure. um,
Nice.
and and so that was our like top focus at the very beginning. So thankfully we were able to sort of get that under wraps and make sure everything was super secure before anyone actually, anyone actually really started using it, for anything real. And so yeah, that was like the key thing that we were really focused on. And then from there it was really about like trying to play catch up with the product, because the product, again, like, it wasn't that we like sat around and were like, all right, here's the like prioritized set of things that like make up an MVP of this product. We were like, here's the bare bones, and like put it online so that we could test it and play around with it. And then people just started
Hmm.
using that. It was really like people started using the very
Uh,
bare bones of the prototype. So we knew that there was a set of things that were required for an actual MVP. So it was really
yeah,
like catching it from there. Some
got it.
basic stuff like being able to log in again and like edit the form that you created. Like simple things were like
I see.
required to really get the legs underneath Chili Pepper as a product.
Nice. I think that's really smart. People spend a lot of time building, making sure the infrastructure is good, and everything's like in place, and then they tell the world, and then some people are interested, other people are not. So I guess you guys really, really were lucky in that regard, where you guys, I think, are smart. I would say that you guys only put out a very, very concentrated effort. I know, like 3 months, I think for a product is pretty reasonable in comparison to maybe a year or 2 years that people spend usually on a product, and then they before they launch, right? So I think you guys were extremely diligent. I mean, it could have been a little bit faster, but I guess like your co-founder was like had a full-time job, so there's other factors, but 3 months is still pretty good, I'd say.
Right. And in fact, like again, Chili Pepper was a big part of our primary purpose at that time, was really just like get to know each other and see how each other collaborated, right? Like part of it was like, can we work well together, right? Like that we were just trying to like create a
Nice.
relationship,
I see, I see.
and see like if we would build this or build something else in the future, or like, that kind of sort of co-founder initial phase. And so it was super casual in that way, and that sort of took a little bit of the time there. But one key thing that I think helped us like not fall into the trap of perfection
Hmm.
was was like knowing very consciously and just like living with the and accepting fully the risk that Notion could just like make one feature update to
Yeah,
add
yeah,
forms to their databases and like knock
mm,
out the need for this entire product, right? And so we just like we embraced that risk and we were like, if that happens, oh well, we'll go build some other add-on or build
yeah,
some
yeah,
other,
yeah,
the next building block that we know needs to exist in Notion. There's a long list of them out in the world. So
yeah.
like, or turn to something else. And so just accepting that risk, I think
Mhm.
enabled us to like not care as much about making it perfect because like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were ready to throw it away at any time.
I think that's very well said. Because a lot of people, when they get into this analysis paralysis mode, they're like, you know what? Like, what if Notion actually comes out with it tomorrow? All this effort that we've put in, it's gonna go to waste. But I think you guys like embrace that, and you're like, if it happens, it happens. We'll deal with it when it happens. I think that's the
Right.
right approach. Just like action, 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 rather than just like trying to figure out all the possibilities, all the things that could go wrong, and trying to like resolve those before you even get started, right?
Right.
So I think that was, I mean, high risk, high reward, right? So cool. So going back to the original, I think, or the journey of Chili Pepper. So you guys started, you created a Twitter account, starting tweeting at friends and family, or like how'd you guys share um Chili Pepper in the community of Notion? Like, I know you are really well connected in the Notion sort of circles. Was that sort of the point where people from that group started using, and that like that's how it blew up? I'm trying to figure like, how did you guys get your first 10 customers? Because usually
Mhm.
first is the hardest, and then growing to like 10 customers, and that's the next hardest thing. So for people who are, they want that, how do I get my first customer? Like, who do I go talk to? um
Yeah, that's a super big challenge. And again, and like one thing about my past, like before Chili Pepper, I had already started sort of exploring venture ideas and had plenty of failures down that track before. So I
mm,
know what it feels like to be looking for customers under every rock and
yeah,
like
yeah,
have crickets.
yep.
um, so this was very different and palpably different. And I think the key thing for us was really tapping into the like extreme and continuing to grow power of Notion's community. Um,
I
so
see.
no, both Carson and I were our Notion ambassadors, and so we were really plugged into that Notion ambassador community, and these were like
Got
people
it,
who
got
were
it.
deeply passionate about Notion, and so that was really the one of the key ways in which we started sharing Chili Pepper because we were like, we know that they've run into the, we I've talked to some of these people about this same problem, and so
mm,
here's this like thing that we built that will help out with that. And
I
so it's
see, I
just a
see.
course of like sharing it with that community, and then they shared it. That's the Notion Ambassador community is a community of community leaders, and so they go
Got
and
it.
share it with their communities, um,
I see, I see.
and so yeah, it was totally like deep word of mouth within the Notion community that like is pretty big. Um, and really is like the niche that we can like that we continue to sit inside of, um and ride the wave of. And so yeah, it was really about that and just sharing it with like the people who we know, who we sparked up conversation around this same type of problem with. And then and what we started to discover were like we then became surprised to see getting picked up by again people who are just running into the same problem, and when they like just
Mm.
searched a little bit ran into Chili Pepper. And so we started to see like we saw a random tutorial on YouTube in Korean about how to set up a Chili Pepper form.
Nice.
And then we
That's
saw a
really
different
cool.
one in Portuguese with a community leader in Brazil who was like sharing tips and tricks for how to set up Notion workspaces. And so as much of that, like there's just like so much content that's being created around Notion
Mhm.
that Chili Pepper was able to just like pop into there with zero, we didn't do any, we really didn't do much of the growth and pushing it at all. It was just riding that wave, and continue to do so.
Yeah, yeah, I see, I see. So I guess the key takeaway is, I mean, yeah, I guess because of the notion, the wave that's still happening and was happening at the time, I think you guys capitalized on it. But I think that another key takeaway is that you guys went from solving a real problem that real people were having, like they had this bottleneck of trying to get data, or like what's it called, form data, whatever, right?
Hmm.
Um, and you had a similar problem, you wanted to, and then you guys just went and solved that problem and then shared it with that community who were running into that problem, and then it just blew up after that, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's the key takeaway is like really just look at the community that you fit into or that you want to belong to, right? And then go participate and see what that community exists. Talk to the real people and what problems they have, and then and like listen closely. And
Hmm.
I think what's hard for like an engineer minded person like myself is I want to jump to solutions, but jumping to a solution very quickly can lead to like you solving for a problem that isn't actually that important or doesn't really exist. It was like this problem was was palpable because I had, again, like I had hosted quite a few meetups with real people who were coming to me, and like I saw them struggle with the same problem at in every
Meetup.
meetup.
That's cool,
And
that's
then I
amazing.
heard them talk about how they were trying to adopt Notion in their team or their organization. And like oftentimes when Notion is being adopted into a team or like into an organization, it starts with a small seed with like one person, like the really
Yeah,
organized person who like organizes the rest of people's work, right? It's like that person. um, and like they like find Notion and like love it and start to like put all of their work into it, but they like often don't have the time because these are often
right.
really busy people, or the like resources to adopt Notion like organization wide in one big planned out project. It's that they can like start to adopt it
Hmm.
piecemeal for a given team where they have a sphere of influence or like one or two teams. And then the rest of their organization needs to still interface with that team, but all that team is managing their
Yeah,
work in Notion now. And so creating ways for those other external teams to like to still to still contribute and like interact with that team in the space that they're doing
yeah,
their work, which has become Notion, is like something that I kept hearing over and over again. And so that's why it was clicking to me. I see where this problem is like popping up in a few different ways. And so and so then like this is the smallest primitive solution, right? Building block that just needs to be added into there to like just make everything easier in those problems.
you're absolutely right. I think, yeah, it's just going from a problem to the product is I think is it should be the natural progression, as opposed to for us builders where we come up with just like random solutions that people don't don't care about, and we're
Right.
like, no one wants to use this product, why? So after you guys launched and you guys started seeing some growth, people were interested in the product. Did you guys ever think about, oh, you know what, we should go and raise some money, or or
Mm.
why did you not do that, and why did you say, we should bootstrap ourselves?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's definitely a conversation that we started to at least have,
Hmm.
especially in that early phase of like working with another co-founder. It's so important to have this type of conversation to like understand how do you feel about taking other people's money, right? Which is really what it means. Um, and so I really see bootstrapping versus fundraising. And bootstrapping, just for everyone, it like means like to not take other people's money, to like try to create a business just by itself and like through its own revenue or through your own savings or whatever. Whereas fundraising is like going and trying to get more money. Um, uh, one, there's a few things the way that I see this, and that Carson and I both agreed around this is one, like fundraising takes a lot of work. You essentially like have to sell the idea of not just like what you've already built, but like the future of what you're going to build to investors, and really the future of like the the different world that's going to exist if your product lives to investors to get them to be willing to give you anything. Um, and they're like, in my mind, there are right and wrong times in an organization to take other people's money. And usually, like, if you're asking someone to invest, you need to have some pretty good confidence that you have a real problem that needs a solution that other people are willing to pay for. Um, and I think that that's sort of the crux is that for me, it's really important to prove that there's a business there before you're trying to fundraise. I think oftentimes people start backwards and they start to like try to get a lot of funding, but haven't yet confirmed that there's a business there. And you're like not yet in business until someone is paying you for your product or service. So
Hmm.
um, now, granted, like some people do this and then create the business and like it's there and there's a lot of good success stories there. So like that, there's plenty of option to do that. I just think that that's super rare. Um, and so for us, like it's definitely not the type of thing where I'm like anti fundraising. It's a like, well, it wasn't. It's an important consideration to think about. Well, is it right for
Right.
my organization at this time, or where it's at, or or what uncertainty that we have right now? And so at the time of Chili Peppers starting, I was like, again, there was that big risk that like this product might need to be thrown away any day now because
Yeah.
Notion
Yeah.
might just drop this feature update. Um, and so I was like, well, the way we thought about it was that we didn't think that it was appropriate to really try to go fundraise, and we know that it takes a ton of work, and we wanted to focus our efforts on first proving that there could be a business here and build a product that could support that business. And so that's really the way that we targeted. We are fortunate, though. Like I want to express that I definitely acknowledge that we had the deep fortune that we had the resources to get it off the
Hmm.
ground, right? Like we had the skill
Right.
set
Right.
to develop it ourselves and do all the coding ourselves. So we didn't actually need a whole lot of outside
Yeah.
money or outside resources to like at least spark it and get it up and running. And so that sort of allows us then to have more flexibility on that front.
Yeah, I think I have a strong opinion on this, and maybe it may be an unpopular opinion that I'm, a strong proponent of bootstrapping and not, funded. Certain products, there's no way that you can self fund, so you have to get funding. Like Figma is one example. That product is a behemoth of a product. I don't know if you know, but like
Hmm.
it's a nice sketch like tool. Has really really good features, mostly for designers. But like the reason I like the bootstrapping route personally is because it keeps your machine, so to speak, as lean as possible. You don't waste money because resources are so limited. You concentrate on the important things and you cut out all the unnecessary things. So it forces you to be, to live in a constraint, and that forces you to be creative in that constraint, which I think for me is like I feel like I work well within a constraint, and with external funding, I feel like I'm being forced or like pushed in a certain direction where I don't want my product to go. That's always been my concern. With this,
Hmm.
you have this creative freedom. If you and the co-founder are on the same page, then I think it doesn't matter if nobody likes the product or like nobody's willing to fund it or if they don't see a future with it. If you guys believe in the product and you see the market, then you're like, let's try it. It's possible it fails, but let me try this. It gives you that freedom with ease, and you're like, yeah, if it doesn't work, we put in the effort, it was our resources, it's like sunk cost, no problem, let's move on.
Right. I think that that's very true. I mean, the other piece that I think about with fundraising is that, and some of the best advice that I've ever gotten on this topic is that you and outside investors don't always have aligned interests,
Right. Right.
right? Like sometimes like their business model is actually about essentially making high risk bets, and they're going to make a
Yes.
bunch of high risk bets to see
Which one works out?
which
Yeah.
one works out. and they're going to try to push those to be the one that works out, and that means high growth. And some of those then decisions that have to be made at an early time are going to be influenced by those by their sort of interests versus what might be of interest
for the company
for the
or the
situation that the company is actually in, right? And so part of the dance of fundraising is actually trying to find investors who have shared interests as you do. Um, but that's really hard, and it takes a ton of work to do that. For me, what it comes down to often is a simple thing of prioritization, right? Am I going to focus my time, which is the most valuable resource that I currently am investing in this venture, uh, toward having all of those conversations, many of which will end in rejection or failure or just not a good fit? Or am I focusing on improving the product or figuring out our strategy or
absolutely.
handling our customer support or really building the business, right? And so, so it's really a trade-off that you have to make as a co-found, as a the creator of a new venture, to figure out where are you going to prioritize your focus and what's best for where the business is for that focus, right? And that, oftentimes I see at the beginning of the company of an organization or a product's life, the focus needs to be there in building
Yeah, the
and
product, yeah,
proving out the
100%.
product or proving out the market fit. And so yeah, that's really sort of how I tackle it.
Yeah, so totally agree there. So getting into the juicy stuff, how much, how much revenue is your business generating at this point in time?
So we're definitely super early, and like only in the first month of launching our premium offering. So Chili Pepper spent a good year and a half of running only a free offering. um, and so in we just released our premium offering last month, and in our first month, we've hit about $130 in MRR, monthly recurring revenue. So that's not bad. It's still fairly small, but not bad for the first month, and is at least enough to where we've broken even with our core operating expenses. So not including payroll, um, for myself, right? But our like baseline, like to run the product, it's now paying for itself. So that's what's good.
No, that's amazing. I think people who are, who launch their product, and even if they get one customer, I think the joy of that, the $5 or the $10 rolling into your bank is just it's amazing, right? So right now, how many customers you guys have at the moment?
So we have over 5,000 users in total, and about like 30 of those have converted to customers. So actually a super
Nice.
small conversion rate if you think about it. Um, but all of our customers or most of that, the grand majority of them were users who had been using Chili Pepper for quite a while and were like sitting there waiting for some of the key premium features that we included in our premium package. So it was we were confident again, like during that whole time, I had been talking to people who were reaching out to support, they were asking for X, Y, and Z. And from that, distilling out, like, all right, well, where's someone actually getting to that next level to where it's becoming something that's actually like critical to something that they're trying to do, to which there's enough value there created for them where where they are willing to pay for it. And so I do feel confident that we hit the right, at least initial out of the gate set of features to include in our premium tier. Um, and so that's what's good. And so what I've listened to heavily is like, all right, well, what's the next set of things that like need to be added into that to like unlock the next like level of evolution that I hear people wanting to take their workspaces into, right? So I hear things like people are trying to like replace their entire applicant tracking their like recruitment system with Chili Pepper and Notion, right? um, And so like there's just like a few things that needed to be added in there that will let them completely just like do away with something like Bamboo or Level or some
Wow.
of those other applicant tracking systems. Um, and other types of workflows like that that are like people are like starting to carve out and push the limits what what their workspaces can do as more and more of their work gets done in their Notion workspace. And so I'm part of what we're really trying to do is listen carefully to those things and discover
Got it.
them. Um, I think that and that leads to sort of the key strategy from my perspective to grow is really trying to lean into the Notion ecosystem and lean into the way in which the Notion ecosystem is growing. So, like, uh, and this I call our like side door strategy, right? I stole this from Guy Raz in his How I Built This book that he wrote on his based on his podcast, and he talks about the side door strategy, which is really like there's the front door, which is all the classic ways of entering the market, right? You're
Yeah.
like Facebook ads or Twitter ads, ad campaign, social media campaign, like all of these types of things, which are all important and something we need to do. Um, but the side door for us is actually the like special ways in which the Notion community
Hmm.
discovers things about Notion. And the way that that is happening is people are creating tons of content around Notion. So things like templates, like there's an entire industry being created around Notion templates where people are creating these premium paid templates and really making them fairly advanced. So trying to figure out how we sort of hook into that and really lean into the ways in which people use Notion and how Chilipepper forms can really fit into that ecosystem is the key way that we're trying to sort of target our growth going forward.
What was the biggest challenge that you guys faced, while building the service and the product?
Yeah, I think this one, I mean, there's like so many challenges all the time. And also there's, I think this question is hard because it's like we're not finished yet, so it's not yet like a, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to reflect on like, oh yeah, that was probably the worst thing. No, no, I think one key thing that I think is hard is like figuring out all of the other things that are needed to get a business started and off the ground,
Mm,
especially the things that like me and my co-founder don't have really any experience with. So stuff like financials and like the legal aspects to like create the the business entity or like privacy policy, nailing down our operating agreement, like having all of the right conversations, which is actually something really important to me. Like so often I've heard all kinds of stories about startups failing, and many of them can be rooted in uh, unhealthy behaviors among the co-founders.
founders, right, right,
And
right.
so a key aspect that I look at in creating a thriving organization, especially with a co-founder, is really hashing out a lot of those difficult conversations up front before they're a problem, right? So that we suss out like, all right, well, what values do you actually hold, and what values do we share and maybe not share, and what does our be like, how do we look at the future, or how do we deal with uncertainty, or how do we deal with risk, and all of those types of things, because having those types of conversations and sussing out really like who each other is and building up each other's relationship is super important to actually like have before you're at a challenging crisis where all the emotions are super high. So figuring out all of that stuff, I think, is and just the nitty gritty of those things is I think challenging, especially for like the comfort place for Carson and I is diving into code and doing and designing the product and like and building, right. But like there's so much more that actually needs to happen in order for the business to actually like get up and off the ground, that you just sort of have to figure out. So go very far out of your comfort zone to really get to dig into all of those things. It's this type of stuff that is why I love to do venture type work.
Hmm.
It's because I love the process of learning in all of these really interesting, challenging ways, and like we're learning in a situation that it's real. So, um, for me, I know you want to ask about like what feels like work versus not, and to me that makes the difference, right? If it's something where it's really being driven by curiosity or
Right,
by
right.
something that I really need to learn,
Hmm.
then it never feels like work, right?
Yeah.
It's what I love. I love to do that, right? And that's what drives motivation for me and what I've seen in others. um,
It becomes play. Like every day is, it's play. It's fun for you rather than work,
right,
which is really important. Yeah. No, I absolutely
right.
agree.
Now there are some areas that do feel like work, even despite those things, when it comes down to it. Right, like dealing with accounting is always going to be a little bit of work for
True.
me, but
Fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah, there's a
To summarize, if you were to summarize, what would be the one key learning out of this whole, like, experience that you've had thus far? And it includes the previous
mm.
experiences you've had, like, where you've started ventures and that didn't pan out.
I mean, I think one key thing with chili pepper was that I'm still learning is to like not underestimate the power of simplicity and aesthetic, really, of like things looking nice, because sometimes what I found is that people really just want something that gets the job done in a super simple way and that looks nice. And that's like it's sort of an advantage that Chili Pepper has that like I just never really tuned into, especially up front, until I kept hearing it from people. Oh, well, it was super simple to create the form and it looks nice on the Notion page. And like that's why people want to use it. So that's something to like really, I think again, like from an engineering mindset, oftentimes we like want to think about, oh, let's make it really, we lean towards complexity, right? And we lean towards making it super advanced and able to do all of these things, but actually sometimes a lot of people out in the world don't want any of that or don't need it. And so, like the keeping it super simple and really honing your focus to make it simple and also make it look comfortable and making the experience comfortable can be super powerful, especially in this day and age of like really crowded, complex things.
And I think that's one of the key things, that if anybody would take away, would be this, like, keep it simple. Keep it
Right,
simple. Get your first paying customer and worry about everything else later. And then the product can be as scrappy as it can be. Get that out there. Don't add complexity for the sake of, complexity, or perfect. Like, don't perfect if it doesn't need to be perfected. Just get it out there.
right.
I think that's the key. um, what are you really most excited about Chili Pepper? Like, in the future, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm like super excited to actually dig into that strategy that I talked about of like the Notion ecosystem is just like continuing to expand even more and more, and we just keep seeing it grow. And so I'm so excited to see like the new things that people are going to create in it. With some of the capabilities that we're going to add, like I'm actually so stoked to see someone like again like replace their an entire system with just like scrapping together Notion and Chili Pepper and like other tools to make that all work in a way that actually like will solve their problems better. That's what's really exciting about sort of working in this space is like just seeing people have the new ability and feel like super empowered to like actually just go solve their own problems. um, and with these little building blocks. And so getting to sort of witness some of those things that I can like feel someone's like chomping at the bit to do is really exciting.
Yeah, I never would have thought, you could build a website out of Notion. That's yeah.
Right. And I've seen people build much more than just a
Yeah,
website.
yeah, yeah. It's insane. Yeah. All right, and I asked all my guests. I want the podcast to be actionable, so I asked all my guests, what is that one thing you or your company is having trouble with right now that you would pay someone to make it go away?
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's the like content creation, marketing, growth hacking. So like that other thing, the front door that I talked about, like the social media, the like creating consistent presence for Chili Pepper and making a bunch of noise out in the world is definitely something that I am not great at, and neither is Carson. Or Carson doesn't have a lot of time to focus on it. So that is something that I would, if I had resources, would definitely invest into. But
I'm
uh,
sure people who are, there are a lot of good content creators. I know that's something that doesn't come natural to me either. I'd happily pay someone to be able to write a blog or do all the content stuff for me. Happy to
right.
pay people for that for sure. All right, cool. I think that sums it up. Thank you so much, Adrian, for joining us.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful, Ali.